So here we are with this driller character. And what you have here is, if I show you just the control points first, you have a spine here that is built from Maya's animation workflow. Clusters are created to have the control points, basically how I want to move this particular spine. And these control curves are controlling the cluster. So if I move, you can see that the entire structure is shifting from the front, while the back is not affected at all. So that was the workflow there. And then the back is again the same way. If I just move the back, then the front is not affected as much. These controls are going to be effective for the tentacles, and this is the master control which will move everything if I want to move the whole model somewhere. Right, so again, nothing too complex here. This is fairly simple. And if I bring up the geo, all you have is a bunch of polygons, again not yet connected to each other, and then I connected them using the skeleton. If I go in my show, and so here you can see, here the bone structure of this character. So it's basically just starting here. This is the root bone, which is going to be the main joint at the back, and then you have all these other joints, and they are branching off from here to different tentacles. And each of the geometry here is parented to the closest bone. So that's how I have done the rigging or the animation part. Yeah, so if I now just look at the controls and how that workflow works. So here is the control. So if I want this character to look up, I can move it up, or I can also rotate so that the character is looking up like this. Let's do the shaded mode, and then I can move around and see how that character is going to be portrayed in the final shot. The same thing with the tentacles. I can move that around. I can also twist the back if I wanted to ever do that, and you see slight motion, and you will see this will be very helpful in the final shot. Or I can move the back up or down, or even forward or backward. So this is a very simple rig. Now this base here is not how it's going to look in the final shot. What I will do, the front here, you see all the teeth, they are just to have some visual representation of how it's going to look. In the final shot, I'm going to build on this model by way of creating some of the details. So what I mean here is, let me create a small box here, and then move this box up here. Let's make it a little bigger, and put it on top of the plate here. And let's imagine that this is going to be a detailed part of some detailed portion of this this character. So what I'll do is take this and take this piece, and then just parent them together. So when I do the control point motion, you can see that now my piece is also going to be moving around with the character. So this piece, imagine that it's all around this plate here, and it has all the details that we have in mind, which is all these tiny teeth and moving parts and all that. So that's how this will be built in the final shot. Okay, so now from here, let's go over to the final shot and see what it would look like. So I'm going to pause and open the other scene. So this is the scene where I will have the action taking place. As you can see here, the shot was tracked in SynthEyes, and it's 300 frames, roughly 302 frames, and it's just going around. And this camera that you see here, by the way, is the camera that was used to build the cabin. So let me just hide it for now. So so now we have this shot here. So the first thing I did was brought in the cabin that I had built over there and put it in the right place. So let's start there. And the cabin, I'm going to I'll show you what the other items are, but let's just bring first the structure. So here is my cabin, here's my all the studs. So let me just hide that for now. This is going to be my interior walls, and the blueprint I don't need to see anymore. So this is how the cabin is going to be. And then I created some other items like a tank here that I would like to explode and create some smoke and fire. But anyway, so here is the way this is going to play out. Now if I move, you can see that this cabin is tracking pretty nicely as to where it should be. Okay, I have applied some material on this so you can see the wireframe and the gray shade, so it's nothing fancy there. Obviously we'll have to block out the road here, so I have created the road layer, which if I do the wireframe you can see it's pretty much a simple model work using the base video here, just to see where the geometry should be. So what I have done here is just created this part of the road. So now you can see, at least between the cabin or the barn and the road, you can see how that the layout is going to be. Okay, so that's my starting point. Then I brought in the let me hide this now. We don't need to see the cabin for now. Go to perspective view. By the way, these lights are just directional lights for now. This ball of lights, or the dome, is just to give an ambient light effect. What I normally do is create this kind of light, and then in my final comp I also bring out the surface shader based ambient occlusion layer. So then I can show the ambient occlusion, and that works out nice, as you will see at the end. And this is just the main sun, and I chose the direction of this sun based on the shadow that I was able to see in the video. Yeah, so this we'll talk about later. But the one part that I want to show you here is the driller. I brought in the driller. Let's look at the controls first. This is the same driller controls that you saw in the other file. This is animated, so you will see how it's actually moving around. As you can see, it's coming from this direction outward, and then it's coming down on the road, and then it's going to do some destruction over there. So that's how I want my animation to look. So now if I bring in the geo node itself and hide the controls, what it should look like is something like this. So here it's quiet, not doing anything. At some frame it's going to rise up. So when it rises up, it's going to run into the structure here. Okay, so let's bring all the structure. Okay, let's start here. So it's going to run into the roof here, and it's going to break the roof out. And from here, it's going to just circle around. So you can imagine that when it does that, all debris should fall around. And then it's coming towards the road through the corner of this garage, as you can see here. You can see from the side. It's coming through the garage here. It's gonna crash onto this road on the side barrier, and just bounce a couple of times there, and then it's gonna lift itself up using its tentacles and come forward towards the road, and then it's gonna dig a huge hole in the middle of the road, and it's just gonna mess it up completely, and while all the traffic is going on and all that. So that's the basic idea of what I want to build. Okay, so now let's talk about what do we need here. If I bring in the final cabin, and let's do the this thing in template so we can see inside a little bit. So when the driller rises, right here, it's going to bring some of this concrete with it, right? And then it's gonna run into this ceiling. So the inside wood and the studs, it's gonna break those things. So they should fly because of the force. And then when it circles around and knocks the front of the garage, and also while it's doing its damage here, it should also bring some of this glass out, blasting out. Yeah. So this is how this is where the glass is gonna crash on this side, and then he comes down on the road and then does the damage. So let's play this at its real frame rate, 24 frames per second, and see how it's gonna go. So there it comes, crashes down, and then rises up to do the damage. Okay. So we need to start planning about what are we going to do here. So the destruction pipeline that I'm going to develop here for Maya anyway, we'll do some work in Houdini also, for particularly the smoke and dust and those things, but bulk of the cracking and the breaking part I'm going to do in Maya. And there are a few ways you can do that. I think I used one of them in my other videos where I knocked side of the building out using DMM module. But this time, this DMM here. But this time what I'm going to do is use Fracture. And I'm not sure if you know this plugin. It's very powerful production level plugin to control the breaking of any material. So I'll pick that up in the next video on how am I going to do that. So we need to think about what to break, right? Which is roughly around this area. That's where the damage is going to be. And then first of all, when it comes up to break the roof, and also when it crashes down onto the side of the road, there should be some smoke developing. So what I have done here is just created a representation of the smoke, and it's basically a ball that's rising up there, and when it crashes down, there's going to be smoke on both sides, and it's just rising up as to how I want the smoke to go up, basically. So just so that I have some ideas as to how I'm going to create the dust and smoke here. Alright, so I'm going to stop here in this video, and next video we'll look up the destruction workflow. Thanks a lot.